Hello everybody in the Hidalgo universe. It's me again, Rick the Hijo Benya, and today we talk about solicitations again. This time it's going to be good. Alright, welcome back everybody. This is the Hidalgo Show, and we're talking a little bit more about solicitation today. We're going to talk about how to manage your house in the event of a solicitation. Solicitation is any offer that comes to you from a foreign government, a foreign organization, any kind of a foreign structure that comes and tries to compel you to come over into their form of law is a solicitation. I'm going to show you how Jacob protected himself against further solicitations of Esau in chapter 27. Now again, this is the benefit of the book of Jasher. The book of Jasher talks about a lot of things in detail that the book of Genesis just skims over. I think the book of Genesis is intended to be a book that literally goes from covenant to covenant to covenant and explains the principles of the covenant, where the book of Jasher goes into far more detail, talking about actually how to manage all the details of what happened. It's a historical book. So let's start at the top with verse 1. And Esau at that time, after the death of Abraham, frequently went in the field to hunt. And Nimrod, king of Babel. Some of you probably hadn't considered that Nimrod was still around at this time, but he was. Nimrod, king of Babel, the same was Amphrael, also frequently went with his mighty men to hunt in the field, and to walk about with his men in the cool of the day. And Nimrod was observing Esau all the days, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all the days. You're probably wondering, where in the world did that jealousy come from? Because Nimrod was this great mighty hunter. Well, Esau was his rival. Verse 4, and on a certain day Esau went in the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his 2 men. And all his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness. But they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself for Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. So he crept around for him in the wilderness, basically looking for Nimrod, keeping an eye on him. Very stealthy Esau. Verse 6, and Nimrod and his men that were with him did not know him. And Nimrod did not know him, meaning did not know he was there. And Nimrod and his men frequently walked in the field at the cool of the day, and to know where his men were hunting in the field. That way he wouldn't shoot his own men, right, with the arrow. So he knew exactly where they were. And Nimrod and 2 of his men that were with him came to the place where they were. When Esau started suddenly from his lurking place, drew his sword, and hastened and ran to Nimrod and cut off his head. Bet you didn't know from reading Genesis that Esau slew Nimrod. Indeed, Esau became Nimrod by lopping off his head. And Esau fought a desperate fight with the 2 men that were with Nimrod. And when they called out to him, Esau turned to them and smote them to death with his sword. And all the mighty men of Nimrod, who had left to go to the wilderness, heard the cry at a distance. And they knew the voices of these 2 men, and they ran to know the cause of it, when they found their king and 2 men that were with him lying dead in the wilderness. And when Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming at a distance, he fled and thereby escaped. And Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod. Now, think about that now. We've covered this before, the valuable garments of Nimrod. Nimrod was given through his father Ham the very skins that were worn by Adam, that Yahuwah Elohim had sacrificed an animal in the garden to clothe Adam and Eve. These garments were passed down to Noah, and these garments were given or were stolen by Ham. The night that Ham went into the tent and did some malicious thing to his mother. Okay, this is an important thing because it just keeps coming up. All these different relics play out differently as things move forward. It's very interesting things. So Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod, which Nimrod's father had bequeathed to Nimrod, and with which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land, and he ran and concealed them in his house. So this garment actually infused Nimrod with some power, prevailed over the whole land, and he ran and concealed them in the house. And Esau took those garments and ran into the city on account of Nimrod's men, and came unto his father's house, Isaac, wearied and exhausted from fight. And he was ready to die through grief when he approached his brother Jacob and sat before him. So here's Esau in a state of belligerence. He's about to die from grief. He is literally, his heart is broken. Okay? He is about to die, literally. He's probably palpitating. His heart's probably racing. He just thinks he's about to die. And he said unto his brother Jacob in verse 12, Behold, I shall die this day, and wherefore then do I want the birthright? In other words, what point is there to having this birthright if I'm going to die today? And Jacob acted wisely with Esau in this matter, and Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, for it was so brought about by the Lord. So the Lord caused this entire situation to happen in order to benefit Jacob, who later would be Israel. And it was all for the sake of the Lord's people and his perpetuity. Verse 13, And Esau's portion in the cave of the field of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth, for the possession of a burial ground, Esau also sold to Jacob, and Jacob bought all this from his brother Esau for value given. You ever heard the term for valuable consideration? Well, in this case, it's for value given. It's a private value. It wasn't given, right? It wasn't told. It was private, and it was kept private. Now watch this. And Jacob wrote the whole of this in a book. He wrote it in a sefer, a book. And he testified the same with witnesses, and he sealed it. And the book remained in the hands of Jacob. Did you hear that? Let's look at the things that Jacob just did. He wrote it in a book. All the testimony. Okay? All the acts. All the purchase. He wrote it all in a book. That's number one. He testified the same with witnesses. So he had a witness. There were others who recognized the transaction that took place. Those witnesses signed it. They left their mark upon it. And then he sealed it. He manipulated the page to a point to where only his seal of authority was put upon it. So now this book, this sefer, becomes law. It is the law of contract. And as it says, it goes. So this is the beginning of the people of God. This is the first time in the history of anything we read where we start to understand how it is that they transacted business. They wrote it in a sefer. They wrote it in a book. They had witnesses. How many witnesses? We're going to find out shortly. And then he seals it. He puts his authority upon it, his seal. And then he kept the book. He kept custody. You hear that? He kept custody of the book. Custodianship. Register not your goods with someone else. Keep those goods in your custodianship. It's part of it. It's very important. So let's continue. And when Nimrod, the son of Cush, died, his men lifted him up and brought him in consternation and buried him in the city. And all the days that Nimrod lived there were 215 years, and he died. And he said, and the days that Nimrod reigned upon the people of the land were 185 years, and Nimrod died by the sword of Esau in shame and contempt. And the seed of Abraham caused his death, as he had seen in his dream. Yes, in fact, earlier in the book of Jasher, he had a dream that he'd die at the hands of Abraham. And this was actually part of the story of Abraham's upbringing. And at the death of Nimrod, his kingdom became divided into many divisions. And all those parts that Nimrod reigned over were restored to the respective kings of the land, who recovered them after the death of Nimrod. And all the people of the house of Nimrod were for a long time enslaved to all the other kings of the land. Okay, now we're over in Jasher chapter 47, and we're going to start in verse 8. Now therefore, my son, says Isaac, teach thy children and thy children's children to fear the Lord, and to go in the good way which will please the Lord thy God. For if you keep the ways of the Lord and his statutes, the Lord will also keep you, his covenant, with Abraham, and will do well with you and your seed all the days. And when Isaac had finished commanding Jacob and his children, he gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people. And Jacob and Esau fell upon the face of their father Isaac, and they wept. And Isaac was 180 years old when he died in the land of Canaan, in Hebron. And his sons carried him to the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the children of Heth for a possession of a burial place. And all the kings of the land of Canaan went with Jacob and Esau to bury Isaac. And all the kings of Canaan showed Isaac great honor at his death. And the sons of Jacob and the sons of Esau went barefooted round about, walking and lamenting until they reached Kereth Arba. And Jacob and Esau buried their father Isaac in the cave of Machpelah, which is in Kereth Arba in Hebron. And they buried him with great honor, as the funeral of kings, as at the funeral of kings. And Jacob and his sons, and Esau and his sons, and all the kings of Canaan made great and heavy mourning, and they buried him and mourned him for many days. And at the death of Isaac, he left his cattle and his possessions and all belongings to his sons. And Esau said unto Jacob, Behold, I pray thee, all that our father has left, we will divide it in 2 parts, and I will have the choice. And Jacob said, We will do so. And Jacob took all that Isaac had left in the land of Canaan, and cattle and the property, and he placed them in 2 parts before Esau and his sons. And he said unto Esau, Behold, all this is before thee. Choose thou unto thyself the half which thou wilt take. And Jacob said unto Esau, Hear thou, I pray thee, what I will speak unto thee, saying, The Lord God of heaven and earth spoke unto our fathers Abraham and Isaac, saying, Unto thy seed will I give the land for an inheritance forever. So here they find themselves in probate, right? They're in probate. They're in a transition from the property of Isaac to the property of Jacob and Esau. So now let's go to verse 18. Now therefore, all that our father has left is before thee, and behold, all the land is before thee. Choose thou from them what thou desirest. And if thou desirest the whole land, take it for thee and thy children forever. And I will take the riches. And if thou desirest the riches, take it unto thee, and I will take this land for me and for my children to inherit it forever. And Nebaioth, the son of Ishmael. So now we got Ishmaelites getting involved, which, by the way, were people who loved Yahuwah Elohim. So don't get this idea that somehow they were Mohammedists. They were not. So the son of Ishmael then was in the land with his children, and Esau went on that day and consulted with him, saying, Thus has Jacob spoken unto me, and thus has he answered me. Now give thy advice, and we will hear. And Nebaioth said, What is this that Jacob hath spoken unto thee? Behold, all the children of Canaan are dwelling securely in their land. And Jacob saith, He will inherit it with his seed all the days. Go now therefore and take all thy father's riches, and leave Jacob thy brother in the land, as he has spoken. And Esau rose up and returned to Jacob, and did as all that Nebaioth, the son of Ishmael, had advised. And Esau took all the riches that Isaac had left, the souls, the beast, the cattle, the property, and all the riches. He gave nothing to his brother Jacob. And Jacob took all the land of Canaan, from the brook of Egypt unto the river Euphrates, and he took it for an everlasting possession, and for his children, and for his seed after him forever. Jacob also took from his brother Esau the cave Machpelah, which is in Hebron, which Abraham had bought from Ephron for a possession of a burial place for him as his seed forever. And Jacob wrote all these things in the book of purchase. Here it is again. He wrote these things in the book of purchase, and he signed it. And he testified all with his 4 faithful witnesses. So as you see, Jacob had 4 faithful witnesses. What does the New Testament, the New Covenant, say concerning establishing a matter? It says that at 2 or 3 witnesses, a matter is established. Well, here is 4 witnesses, twice the amount needed to establish a matter as fact. These are the words which Jacob wrote in the book, saying, The land of Canaan and all the cities of the Hittites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, Amorites, Perizzites, and the Girgashites, all the 7 nations from the river of Egypt unto the river Euphrates, and the city of Hebron, Kirith Arba, and the cave which is in it, the whole did Jacob buy from his brother Esau for value. Again, a private transaction. For a possession and for an inheritance for his seed and after him forever. And Jacob took the book of purchase and the signature, the command and the statutes and the revealed book. You hear that? And he placed them in an earthen vessel in order that they should remain for a long time. And he delivered them into the hands of his children. So, again, I'm going to read that verse. So very important. Do you notice he did not give it to an attorney? He did not give it to Egypt. Let me read that again. And Jacob took the book of purchase and the signature, the command and the statutes, and the revealed book. Okay. So he's got a lot of law here. Okay. He's got the law. He's got the command. What is that? That's Yahu Elohim. He's got the statutes. That's all that he's written down. And the revealed book. And he placed them in an earthen vessel in order that they should remain for a long time, and he delivered them into the hands of his children. Esau took all of that his father had left him after his death from his brother Jacob. And he took all the property, from man and beast, camel and ass, ox and lamb, silver and gold, stones and bdellium, and all the riches which had belonged to Isaac the son of Abraham. There was nothing left which Esau did not take unto himself, from all that Isaac had left after his death. And Esau took all this, and he and his children went home to the land of Seir the Horite, away from his brother Jacob and his children. And Esau had possessions amongst the children of Seir, and Esau returned not to the land of Canaan from that day forward. And the whole land of Canaan became an inheritance to the children of Israel for an everlasting inheritance. And Esau with all his children inherited the mountain of Seir. So it's very important that we understand that the book, the statutes, the command, the authority, the signature, the sealed book, the purchase, all are in this earthen vessel, and they're being protected, and they're in the hands of his children. He has given them agency. Okay? He has given them agency to fulfill the law, the command he has written, the statutes of the children of Jacob, the revealed book. Right? Very, very important. This is how you run a house. This is how you run your house. This is how you do it privately, even to this day. What people are struggling with is they've given up all of their authority to the state. The state is running our lives for us. And it's happening that way because we've freely given it. We have subjected ourselves by solicitation and by giving up custodia legis, which is the legal custody of all of our own goods in law. We're allowing the state to interpret what that legal custody means. We're allowing the state to interpret what it means that is written in our books, in our trust. If you go out today and you go to an attorney and you create a trust, that trust is going to be written with the state as a benefactor. The state's going to be the benefactor because when you pass away, your children are going to receive an inheritance. Indeed, they will. But not before the state gets theirs. You know, this is all a game that's being played to perpetuate a Babylonian system that still exists to this day. Nimrod might have died. Esau might have died. And all of the patriarchs beyond them may have died, but Satan is live and well. And his system is live and well. What we need to understand is that if we want to operate privately as our patriarchs did, we need to follow their pattern. Their pattern is very obvious. They wrote it in a book of record. That is their law, the statute. That is their contract. They had witnesses sign it, that they observe these things to be facts, that they know these things to be facts. And then they sealed it. And they kept custodianship of that document for when that dark day came, as you'll see in a moment. The record could be found and justice could be had. Okay, so now we're in the 56th chapter of Jasher. And we're going to start with verse 22. And Jacob ceased commanding his sons, and he drew his feet into the bed, and he died and was gathered to his people. And Joseph fell upon his father, and he cried out and wept over him, and he kissed him and called out in a bitter voice, and he said, "Oh, my father, my father." And his sons' wives and all his household came and fell upon Jacob, and they wept over him and cried in a very loud voice concerning Jacob. And all the sons of Jacob rose up together, and they tore their garments, and they put on sackcloth upon their loins. And they fell upon their faces, and they cast dust upon their heads toward the heavens. And a thing was told unto Osnath, Joseph's wife, and she rose up and put on a sack, and she with all the Egyptian women with her came and mourned and wept for Jacob. And also from the land of Canaan did the women come unto Egypt when they heard that Jacob was dead. And they wept for him in Egypt for 70 days. And it came to pass after this that Joseph commanded his servants, the doctors, to embalm his father with myrrh and frankincense and all manner of incense and perfume. And the doctors embalmed Joseph as Joseph had commanded them. And all the people of Egypt and the elders of all the inhabitants of the lands of Goshen wept and mourned over Jacob, and all his sons and the children of the households lamented and mourned over their father Jacob many days. And after the days of his weeping had passed away, at the end of 70 days, Joseph said unto Pharaoh, I will go up and bury my father in the land of Canaan, as he made me swear, and then I will return. Now pay attention. Watch this. And Pharaoh, verse 32, sent Joseph, saying, Go up and bury thy father. And he said, And as he made thee swear. And Joseph rose up with all his brethren to go to the land of Canaan to bury their father Jacob, as he had commanded them. Okay, so they were obeying the law, the statute that they had commanded. Where do you think that came from? Where do you think that was written? Okay. Now pay attention. Verse 33. And Pharaoh commanded that it should be proclaimed throughout Egypt, saying, Whoever goeth not with Joseph and his brethren to the land of Canaan to bury Jacob shall die. Okay? So the Pharaoh was no enemy of the people of Israel. This was before the great tribulation of the house of Israel. Okay? Verse 34. And all Egypt heard of Pharaoh's proclamation, and they all rose up, and the servants of Pharaoh, and the elders of his house, and the elders of the land of Egypt went up with Joseph, and all the officers and nobles of Pharaoh went as the servants of Joseph, and they went to bury Jacob in the land of Canaan. Now, does that sound like the Egypt that you know? No. This is a cooperative Egypt. This is an Egypt that loves God's people. And the sons of Jacob carried their bier upon which he lay, according to all that their father commanded them. So did his sons unto him. So he even commanded, this is how you're going to carry me. He put it in the statutes of the Sefer, the book, right? The book that he put in the earthen vessel. And the bier was of pure gold, and it was inlaid round about with onyx stones and bdellium. And the covering of the bier was gold woven work, joined with threads, and over them were hooks of onyx stones and bdellium. And Joseph placed upon the head of his father Jacob a large golden crown, and he put a golden scepter in his hand. And they surrounded the bier, and as it was the custom of kings during their lives. And all the troops of Egypt, this is important, all the troops of Egypt went before him in this array. At first all the mighty men of Pharaoh, and the mighty men of Joseph, and after them the rest of the inhabitants of Egypt. And they were all girded with swords, and equipped with coats of mail, and the trappings of war were upon them. Now, why would they have war trappings on? They're going to a funeral, right? It's a state funeral. It's huge. But they're going to the funeral. So why? Why would they do that? You suppose they knew something was going to happen here? Watch this. And all the weepers and mourners were at a distance opposite to the bier, going and weeping and lamenting, and the rest of the people went after the bier. And Joseph and his household went together near the bier, barefooted and weeping, and the rest of Joseph's servants went around him. Each man had his ornaments upon him, and they were all armed with their weapons of war. And 50 of Jacob's servants went in front of the bier, and they strewed along the road myrrh and aloes, and all manner of perfume. And all the sons of Jacob that carried the bier walked upon their perfumery. And the servants of Jacob went before them, strewing the perfume along the road. So this was a major deal. You think red carpet's cool? No, this is way bigger than red carpet. Okay, verse 42. And Joseph went up with a heavy camp, and they did after the manner every day until they reached the land of Canaan. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which was on the other side of Jordan, and they mourned an exceeding great and heavy mourning in that place. And all the kings of Canaan heard of this thing, and they all went forth, each man from his house. 31 kings of Canaan. And they all came with their men to mourn and weep over Jacob. And all the kings beheld Jacob's bier, and behold, Joseph's crown was upon it. And they also put their crowns upon the bier, and encircled it with crowns. Crowns of crowns, folks. And all these kings made in that place a great and heavy mourning with the sons of Jacob and Egypt over Jacob, for all the kings of Canaan knew the valor of Jacob and his sons. And the report reached Esau. And here's where it gets interesting. Right? Dun dun dun, here we go. Saying, Jacob died in Egypt, and his sons and all Egypt are conveying him to the land of Canaan to bury him. Now, isn't that an interesting word, conveying? They're conveying him. This is a deed transaction. This is a deed that was written in the book. What is a deed? A deed is something that you do, right? This is a deed being conveyed. Think about it. 47. And Esau heard this thing, and he was dwelling in Mount Seir. And he rose up with his sons and all his people and all his household, a people exceedingly great. And they came to mourn and weep over Jacob. Now this couldn't cause any problem, could it? These two sons hated each other. And it came to pass in verse 48, when Esau came, he mourned for his brother Jacob. And all of Egypt and all of Canaan rose up and mourned a great mourning with Esau over Jacob in that place. And Joseph and his brethren brought their father Jacob from that place. And they went to Hebron to bury Jacob in the cave of his fathers. And they came unto Kereth Arba, to the cave. And as they came, Esau stood with his sons against Joseph and his brethren as a hindrance in the cave, saying, Jacob shall not be buried therein, for it belongeth to us and to our father. So here's Esau standing at the way, saying, no, this belongs to us and our father. You are not going to put Jacob there. Now remember, the land was given to Jacob. Esau only kept the riches. Remember that? Okay, so verse 51. And Joseph and his brethren heard the words of Esau's sons, and they were exceedingly wroth. And Joseph approached unto Esau, saying, What is this thing which they have spoken? Surely my father Jacob bought it from thee for great riches after the death of Isaac. Now 25 years ago, in all the land of Canaan, he bought thee from thee, and from thy sons and thy seed after thee. And Jacob bought it for his sons and his seed after him for an inheritance forever. And why speakest thou these things this day? And Esau answered, saying, Thou speakest falsely and utter lies. For I sold not anything belonging to me in all this land, as thou sayest, neither did my brother Jacob buy aught belonging to me in this land. And Esau spoke these things in order to deceive Joseph with the words. For Esau knew that Joseph was not present in those days. See, wasn't present in those days when Esau sold all belonging to him to the land of Canaan to Jacob. And Joseph said unto Esau, Surely my father inserted these things with thee in record of purchase, and testified the record with witnesses, and behold, it is with us in Egypt. Did he say it's with Egypt? No, he said it is with us in Egypt. They still had custodianship. And here is how Esau answered in verse 56, saying unto him, Bring the record. All that thou wilt find in the record, so will we do. In other words, we don't believe you still got that record. There's no way you still got it. And Joseph called unto Naphtali, and this is interesting. Joseph called unto Naphtali his brother, and he said, Hasten quickly, stay not, and run, I pray thee, to Egypt, and bring all the records, the record of the purchase, the sealed record, and the open record, and all of the first records in which all the transactions of the birthright are written, fetch thou. And thou shalt bring them unto hither, that we may know from them all the words of Esau and his sons, which they spoke this day. And Naphtali hearkened to the voice of Joseph, and he hastened and ran to go down to Egypt. And Naphtali was lighter on foot than any of the stags that were upon the wilderness, for he would go upon ears of corn without crushing them. We're talking Flash here, okay? You think the legend of Flash is just some mythical imagination by some guy at DC Comics? No, I don't think so. This is where it came from, folks. This guy was fast. And when Esau saw that Naphtali had gone to fetch the records, he and his sons increased their resistance against the cave, and Esau and all his people rose up against Joseph and his brethren to battle. That's what the enemy does, right? And all the sons of Jacob and the people of Egypt fought with Esau and his men, and the sons of Esau and his people were smitten before the sons of Jacob. And the sons of Jacob slew of Esau's people 40 men. And Cushiam, the son of Dan, the son of Jacob, was at the time with Jacob's sons. But he was about 100 cubits distance from the place of battle, for he remained with his children, with the children of Jacob's sons, by Jacob's spire to guard it. And Cushiam was dumb and deaf. Still he understood the voice of consternation amongst men. So he could read their faces. He could tell if something was going on, right? And he asked, saying, Why do you not bury the dead? What is the great consternation? And they answered him the words of Esau and his sons. And he ran to Esau in the midst of the battle, and slew Esau with a sword. And he cut off his head, and it sprang to a distance. And Esau fell amongst the people of the battle. And when Cushiam did this thing, the sons of Jacob prevailed over the sons of Esau. And the sons of Jacob buried their father, Jacob, by force in the cave, and the sons of Esau beheld it. And Jacob was buried in Hebron, in the cave of Machpelah, which Abraham had bought from the sons of Heth for the possession of a burial place, and he was buried in very costly garments. And no king had such honor paid him as Joseph paid unto his father at his death. For he buried him with great honor, like unto the burial of kings. And Joseph and his brethren made a mourning of 7 days for their father. Now, what I want to point out is the obvious. The law was written on paper in a book, witnessed, sealed, and kept in custody of the family at all times. The family maintained agency at all times. This is very important. This is how you run your house. Now I know there's liable to be many people with questions. Where do I start? How do I do this? And I think it would be very important that everybody begins with the most simple of processes, and that is authentication. Start with authentication. Get the facts authenticated. That you have a birthright. That birthright belongs to you, and that you are American. That's the first and foremost. Secondly, baptism. Show the world that indeed you are of the family of God, and that you have the capacity and agency to follow His will. Third, make the Scripture your law. Write your statutes on paper, how you will follow the law, how you and your family will follow the law. Have your family and others, faithful witnesses, sign to witness the fact that you, in fact, follow the law, that this is your law. Seal it. Have it sealed by your house seal. If you don't have one, create one. Not hard. You can just get an embosser. 40, 50, 70 bucks maybe. You get a really special one, they're over 100, but they're not very expensive. Put on there house of whatever your house name is. Put your favorite verse on there. Maybe put, for the sake of the Lord or whatever. Put it on there. Get yourself an embosser. Get yourself some gold seals. You can buy them on Amazon.com or pretty much get them anywhere. They're just these gold stickers you put on the paper and you emboss them. And prepare to start to put down the statutes of your house. How it is that your house does business. And keep things private. When somebody says, what was the cost? Understand that that question is asked so that they know how much to tax you. But when the cost is private, you cannot be taxed for multiple reasons. First of all, it can't impair the obligation of a contract. And charging a tax is an impairing. It's an encumbrance. But there are so many things, so many little details that I'm sure that you're pondering about now. Let the Lord guide you in all these things. Start simple. Get authenticated. Get a certified copy of your birth certificate or your certificate of live birth, which is more appropriate, but either way. Send it to the state that you were born in. When you get it back, send it then to the feds, in Sterling, Virginia. Have them authenticated. You'll get it back. It'll have a grommet in it. You won't be able to separate them. And it'll be sealed by the Secretary of the Department of State. That is essentially the title of your birthright. The birthright as an American. Then get yourself a statement of baptism have those who witnessed you being baptized, have them sign it. Why not 4 faithful witnesses? Sounds great to me. It's like our forefathers did. And then have it sealed. Show forth that you are a part of the family of God and that you have agency to follow God's law. Those are the 2 most easy steps you can possibly do. That's where you start. Now, I want to thank my patrons. I want to thank everybody who supports me. Not many of you, but there are some. And I could certainly use more patrons. If you're somebody who would like to be a patron, I invite you, please, come and join me at patreon.com, the House of Hidalgo Show. And sign up at the $1, $5, $16 level, or maybe more. But just know that to get extra content, and I have created extra content that only the $5 level and above can get. So I would recommend you sign up at a $5 monthly level, supporting this ministry, which supports so many other ministries, by the way. And then, if you can't be a patron, that's okay too, because we've got a Facebook channel. And I would love for you to come to our Facebook channel, like it, visit it often, make comments on the videos, participate. If you aren't on social media, you're not a real big Facebook person, but you visit YouTube once in a while, we have a YouTube channel too. So you can get on YouTube. Rick Tehijo Binya, that's the name of the channel. And just get on the YouTube, watch our videos, comment on the videos, like them. Make sure you hit that button to subscribe so that when you hit the bell, you'll get notifications right away every time I make a video. Pretty much every Monday. If all those things are things that you don't want to do, you want to reach me though, I do have a personal email that you can send me an email. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen right now. And if you want to write me or send me a gift of some sort that you want me to share online with everybody during the show, you can do that too. You can send me a package at the address below that you see on the screen right now, and I will share as you wish. If you don't want me to share it, let me know. But these are all things that are available to you in order to participate with me as we go forward. So I appreciate you. I thank you for listening. And I want to remind you that everything we do here at the Hidalgo Show, every single thing we do, is all about the blood.